Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very privileged to be here today on this auspicious occasion of a lecture that celebrates two of our most distinguished icons in KZN, who happen to live in the same neighborhood, who were friends. Umqali wendlela nomafukuzela. Umqali wendlela umafukuzela. If you think about it, it is about new beginnings. It is about hard work. These two individuals are about hard work and starting new things, new beginnings all the time. Umqali wendlela. So it is such a privilege to be here today. I just want to say, as a committee that organizes this lecture every year, we want to acknowledge Professor Lebu Moletsane, who is the chair, the co-chair of this lecture, who is not with us today because she is on sabbatical leave. We're hoping that she's having a productive time wherever she is. She would have loved to be here today, but unfortunately, she couldn't be here. I would also love to acknowledge the participation of the two families, the Dube family, through the Dube Foundation, who participated in the organization of the lecture, as well as the Shembe family, represented by Iskabeto Sentlalamafini, critical thinkers. They were with us through this journey. We're very grateful for that. So we acknowledge that up front. Right now, I'm not going to welcome you. Ngizobiza inkosi ekolish. Ubaba ukhabazela. Umumbo. Sizobiza yena, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, who is the head of college, to come forward and welcome all of you to this occasion, because it is his lecture. We just work and make sure that it happens, but it is his lecture. Kabazela, over to you.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu mphathi wohlelo Nyambos. Kuyintokozo enkulu kimi ukwamukela umama uNomusa Dube Ncube. Ngiyathemba sonke siyamazi onguyena okade ephethe njengondunankulu esifundazweni saKwaZulu Natal. Ngizophinda futhi ngenkulu inhlonipho ngamukele umnumzane uZweli Dube na wonke umndeni kababa uDube umafukuzela. Ngamukele futhi ngenkulu intokozo uNkosazana Don Thandeka King, the great granddaughter of umqali wendlela Baba Isaiah Shembe. Siyakwamukela. Ngamukele na wonke umndeni wakaShembe okhona namhlanje, abefundisi, ngizwe kuthiwa kukhona nenhlalisuthi, ngibingelele nengudlungudlu, ngizwe kuthiwa khona nengudlungudlu, nabo bonke ithimba labo abahambisana nalo, sanimukela kulesi sikhungo sakwaZulu Natali eMgungundlovu. Ngizokwamukela futhi nesikhulumi esiqavile nalabo abazonanela inkulumo, Professor Karumbisa, Professor Kumalo, Mr. Sizwe Zwane, ngamukele futhi onke amadini akhona namhlanje ukuzozimazisa lo mcimbi. Ngibonile uProfessor Vitalis Chikoko ukhona. Nawo bonke abefundisi abakhona kanye nabo bonke abafundi nawo wonke umphakathi okwazile ukuthi uphumelele namhlanje kuba ube ingxenye yalo mcimbi obaluleke kangaka. So I do extend my welcome to all of you esteemed guests and distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all, including the youth who are here today, who have opened with some beautiful music. With great pleasure and deep gratitude, I welcome you to the annual John Langalibalele Dube Memorial Lecture on behalf of the University of KwaZulu-Natal Executive, as well as the College of Humanities. This lecture series remains one of the most significant in our academic calendar, allowing us to honor the enduring legacy of Dr. John Langalibalele Dube while contributing to vital conversations about democracy, freedom, and the development of African thought. It is also a central pillar of UKZN's commitment to research, community engagement, and intellectual exchange. This year's theme invites us into a thought-provoking dialogue between two towering figures in South Africa's political and spiritual history, John Langalibalele Dube and Prophet Isaiah Shembe. Both were visionaries in their own right, leaders whose profound influence transcended the boundaries of politics and religion. Not only have their legacies shaped the socio-political landscape of KwaZulu-Natal and the country and the continent at large, but also our understanding of what it means to pursue true liberation for all Africans. Dr. Dube, founder of the African National Congress, was a dedicated advocate for Pan-Africanism, a philosophy that called for the liberation and empowerment of African people across the continent and the diaspora. He believed that education and self-reliance were the bedrocks of freedom and that Africans needed to be equipped with the intellectual and practical tools to rebuild their nations after colonial rule. Rooted in the conviction that the prosperity of one African nation was tied to the well-being of all, his vision was inclusive. In our current context, where inequality remains one of the pressing challenges, Dube's call for unity and development is more relevant than ever. Prophet Isaiah Shembe, a spiritual leader and founder of the Nazareth Baptist Church, is a figure equally deserving of reflection. His teachings, while initially focused on the well-being of the Amazulu people, have extended beyond ethnic and national borders, offering a spiritual framework that addresses the intersections of culture, health, and social justice. Shembe's movement, one of the largest African instituted churches, confronts political and economic issues, showing us how deeply intertwined religion and liberation are in African society. Today, we reflect on how these two leaders might engage in a dialogue about the present state of Africa, What would Dube say about Shembe's growing influence across the continent? How would Shembe respond to the enduring divisions caused by tribalism and economic exclusion? Standing at this crossroad, we are invited to explore these questions and imagine a path forward. We remain guided by their shared commitment to African unity, self-determination, and cultural resilience. I warmly welcome our speakers again today, Professors Blessing Karumbitsa and Simangaliso Kumalo, who are uniquely equipped to guide us through this rich and multifaceted dialogue. Each brings a wealth of knowledge and insight into the intersections of politics, religion, and African identity. We are also privileged, as I indicated earlier, to have with us esteemed respondents, Mr. Zweli Dube, Ms. Dawn Tandega King, and Mr. Sizwe Zwane, whose perspectives will deepen our engagement with the themes at hand. I would like to take this moment to express my sincere gratitude to the organizing committee, whose tireless efforts ensured the continued success of this lecture series. Your dedication to preserving and amplifying the legacy of Dr. John Langalibalele Dube and Prophet Isaiah Shembe is truly commendable. As we embark on this intellectual journey together, I encourage each of you to not only reflect on the lessons of the past, but also to actively contribute to shaping the future. Dr. Dube and Prophet Shembe remind us that African unity, progress, and prosperity depend on our ability to engage in open dialogue and foster inclusivity. Let us take inspiration and be reminded that the power to shape the future lies within us. We are the architects of tomorrow, building bridges, not barriers. Through collaboration, compassion, and courage, we create a legacy of unity and empowerment. I welcome you once more and look forward to the thought-provoking discussions that lie ahead. Ngiyabonga kakhulu, and let's begin now the conversation.
So today, let me present to you I will start with Professor Blessing Kurumbiza. He's currently a senior researcher associate at Mancosa, a project associate for EU Erasmus-funded Forest 21 project, which ends December 2024, an associate professor of rural development sociology at Osiri University, where he contributes to the African development programs in the African indigenous knowledge programs. Kurumbiza holds a PhD in economics, history from University of KwaZulu-Natal, a Doctor of Theology in Liberation from Auckland's Theology Seminar. He's a constant working consultant with Isiqabeto Central Muffin, a Nazareth Baptist Church think tank. He is passionate about asset-based community development, stakeholder engagement specialist, and a researcher on rural development institutions such as traditional authority.
To lay down the ground rules for engagement, I'm going to ask all our speakers, we give you 10 minutes to make your input, because at the end of the day, we would like to have interaction with other people. So I would want you to take your 10 minutes seriously. After 9 minutes, I'm going to stand up, and you don't know what I'm going to do if I move this way. So I'm going to ask, what I'm going to ask us to do is, I'm going to ask the two main speakers to speak, Then after that, we're going to have the Shembe Cultural Group with one item. Then thereafter, we'll have the three respondents. Professor Karumbidza, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the intimidation. I stand in the protocols that have already been established with respect to the Shembe family, the Dube family. Sanbonan, Niapila, Siyabonga. As blessing, son of Uma Dube, to Karumbidza, Kastole, Moyo, Gono, Chirandu, Kanyamatope, Chirambaguraswa, Kamsikawanu. I am Zimbabwean born, African, with a Malawian mother and a Mozambican ancestry that can be traced to Engonini, Africa, via the historic Zululand through a processes such as the Bantu migrations southwards and the Mufetan that reversed the migration back into the interior. Yet my ID documents me and reduces me to a Zimbabwean. That is one of the problems that we have with the conversations that we do have about identity and who we are. But to foreground my contribution to this mammoth task laid by the Deputy Vice Chancellor, I would like to make a disclaimer. While I'm a student of liberation theology, my interest in Isaiah Shembe has nothing to do with the theological contribution, but it is about his agency and him as a historical figure. When I had an opportunity, having become what they called way back in 1995, an outstanding young person of the year at the University of Zimbabwe, I was offered 2 scholarships. One was to Oxford, one was to University of Natal, Durban then. My choice was not difficult. I've always wanted to come to KwaZulu-Natal to see the land that we passed through as we came from the north. There were 4 specific families I was interested in. The Dube, J.L. Dube, the Tuskegean, where my mother came from. The Shembe family, because of the fact that maybe people in South Africa do not realize this, but intaba kulaba baseduzane nayo abayiboni ubunzima bayo. People may not realize that ibandla lamaNazareta, the Shembe Church and Shembeism, is one of the very few things that were founded and started by Black African people that still stand today and still growing. The other family I was interested in, because I was a historian, was umndeni kaBabu Buthelezi uGatsha. Because as a historian of a newspaper growing up in the 1980s, we would hear about Zululand and the Bantustan, and this man called Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and I wished to come and see him. And indeed, I arrived and I met him. Now, having the other thing I also wanted was to marry a Zulu wife. Because I was told of inhlonipho yabantwana bakaZulu. Bagathi angihlonipha abadala bakithi osithole abasukelana behamba nenkosi yamalozi, ngithi angizomthola, ngafika ngempela ngathola umntwana wakaZulu wangizalela abantwana about 2 abafana. So in a way, my Zululand trip was very successful. But let's come and to talk. This today is a dialogue. So it's not about Dube versus Shembe. It's about Dube and Shembe. Interpreting one of the challenges that I have in what I've read and gone through trying to understand this thing about Shembe was that his life is not located and his identity in who he was. So interpreting Shembe's life and legacy requires locating him within his historical context, resisting the temptation to impose modern perspectives on values. Born in 1865, Shembe's experiences were shaped by colonialism, traditional Zulu culture, and the Christian missionary influences. Through situating Shembe in his context, we can begin to gain a nuanced understanding of his prophetic message, his engagement with colonial powers, and his role in shaping the Nazareth Baptist Church. This contextual approach will allow us to appreciate his agency, the innovation, and evaluating him through the lens, rather than evaluating him through the lenses of contemporary thought processes. The key principles in historical interpretation include contextualization, objectivity, and source criticism. If you assign labels to people, like I have seen and heard people saying Shembe was a Zulu prophet, I'm thinking this is as if Shembe stood up and said, I am a Zulu prophet. He never said he was a Zulu prophet. We might want to say he was a prophet to the Zulu communities, which is where he was, which is where he spent most of his time. So labels like traditionalizers and modernizers tend to create binary oppositions, obscuring the multifaceted nature of African leaders and the experiences and motivations that pushed and propelled them. Who is and who was the prophet Mudliwamafa Shembe? Isaiah Shembe, a prophet to the Zulu nation, the founder of the Nazareth Baptist Church, was a key figure, born in Natal during the period when colonialism was entrenched in Natal, and the Zulu nation was beginning to go through decline. Having grown, raised, and attended missionary churches, he became very disappointed by the very idea that you had to be Western to be able to become a child of God. And he was very disoriented by the fact that the missionaries had brought the Africans to know God. Baze baba neculo elithi lifikile ivangeli esizweni sakwaZulu. If you go down the stanzas, they then say besisemnyameni. And uShembe looked at these people and listened to these songs and say, kanti umnyama into enjani? Because they found us with God. They took us away from God and they put us in churches. They institutionalized our relationship with God. That required that for you to relate with God, you had to westernize first. You had to look like them. These jacket and ties, these things, these stupid things we wear, are not relevant for Africa. We are in tropical Africa. When I went to Oxford, I realized and understood, and when I went to Norway, to the university in Norway, I realized and understood why they need jackets and ties. It's there to keep you warm, because kuyabanda bazalwane. So, Shembe's disappointment and disagreement with the fact that these people, with their good intentions, and as I know now, Prof, I see you looking at me and your watch, is that the road to hell is written in good intentions. We won't go into their intentions, singo Shembe namhlanje. So Shembe, those people that speak of Shembe as a Zulu prophet, forget that umama wakhe uSitheka kaHadebe was a Sotho woman. So she wasn't Zulu, she was Sotho. And all of a sudden, he is Zulu. If Shembe's mother was from Lesotho, why define her product? Is he not part of Shembe as Zulu? So I'm going to propose that identity and the choices that we put on people can be choices. But in some cases, they are not choices. They are deliberate markers meant to locate people and put them in a limited geographical space. Njengalaba bantu, let me address this because I'm here now. Kunabantu abati, kunabantu bokufika. Ungazocabanga ukuthi kunomuntu ofikile nje ongazalwanga. I just want to dispel that myth, Prof, and say, nabo bafika nemthwalo mpela, but abafikanga bazelwe. And as they are born and raised, they are much more than that single tag that we give at people. So identity, we need to own this and we need to open it up so that we don't end up in the trap of tribalism, unnecessary xenophobia that is fueled and funded by medias of people abanenhloso yokusihlukanisa njengoba benzile befika ukuze sibe silwa thina abantwana bomuntu bona babebedla ifa lethu. Njengoba bethi ifa lezithutha lidliwa abahlakaniphileyo. So as I now understand why amanazareta bengazifuyi inja uzwa bethi isikhathi sidliwe inja nenja yakhona awuyibonanga. So as I conclude, because I have now been intimidated, I wanted to locate Shembe within the context of the time that he emerged and what he was responding to, and to now send a word to those people. Mam Nomsa Dube unguma wami wena. I'm proud I have a mother, Uma Dube, who was a premier. Yeah? So those people go into leadership. Is there anything we can learn from Ushembe? What kind of leadership does Africa call for today? In today's Africa, we have very few people worth of the title of leadership. People who understand what their people need, people who understand who they are, people who understand what they need and what they need to do and how they can come together to be able to achieve that. And Ushembe, not Dube, they were able to give us the template. So if I had been given time, that's the template I was going to present, and I believe that in the conversations that we will have, we will be able to put in that template. What does it mean? Stewardship over resources. How do you afford to eat and have high-rise buildings, all the trappings of life when your people are starving? How do you afford to go to sleep when the mothers and the children in the Congo are not sleeping because of the wars in the Congo? How do we afford to go to bed and sleep when the mothers and the children in Palestine are receiving gifts of that explode rather than flowers and chocolates? How can we become an Africa, and how can we become Africans that look at La angisilazi lasuka kuphi igama lamakwerekwere bazalwane, but these people, esithi leadership yethu and our campaign is focused on asibabuyisele la basuka khona. Have we went there and gone there to start to engage with the leaders there ukuthi hayi bazalwane? But I understand why our African leaders do not call each other to order. If I beat my own wife, I cannot go to my neighbor mshayishaye umfazi wakhe because nami ngizoshaya owami. Our African leaders are spineless people in positions who rarely are worth of the name leaders because they are not standing up to do what leaders eat. Leaders eat last, but in Africa, leaders eat everything. Thank you.
Ngizocela ukuthi ke izikhulumi zethu zisukume uma ngabe kuukuthi ziyaphendula ngoba bengizofisa ukuthi zibe la ukube bezikhona ihlalo kodwa ke ngoba zikho akulutho sizoqhubha nje ngendlela esizokwazi ukuthi siqhube ngayo. Ngizocela ukunipha ke ithuba usukume usichaze ukuthi ubani bese usho ukuthi umbuzo ubhekise kubani. Bese ke sicela ukuthi sithathe leyo mbuzo ngezikhulumi zethu. Ngizocela ukuthi senze imibuzo emithathu ngesikhathi esisodwa. Sizothatha la siphinde phakathi nendawo size ngala. Sibuye kanjalo kanjalo. Ngicela ke ukuthi sithatheke leli thuba sixoxisane. Uzophakamisa nje isandla bese ngiyakukhomba ubuse ke uyawubuza umbuzo. Sengiqalile nanga umfowethu lapha ngizoqala ngaye bese ngiza ngumfowethu lapha emuva ngicela nangala bawu3 nje ngifuna bawu3 ethe go akekho ngala ngizobuya ke futhi bese ngibuya ngiza kunanga umfowethu ngala socela
Sanibonani.
yebo
Usaziso wawazondo lo. Not to divert the house, I would really like to project my question to any of the lecturer that might be in a position to give us the answer. I'm from the Nazareth Baptist Church, well known as the Shembe Church. My concern is grounded on the studies that we normally find online, published by the lecturers. As a member of the Nazareth Baptist Church, I find a lot of false, irrelevant information. I want to find out from them, as a member of the Nazareth Baptist Church, what sources do they use when they gather the information that they publish? That's just my question. Thanks.
siyabonga. Ngizocela uprofessor Karambu ngifuna ukulifunda kahle isibongo ukuze ngingafundi lokhozana. It's Professor Karambizi. First, I responded to the first question about e-research.
Thank you for limiting me to which question I should respond to. It's Karumbidza, ukudumisa, Karumbidza. It's not a difficult surname. Karumbidza. It's from ukudumisa. Imsebenzi kamkhulu wami ebusizweni sakithi beku imbongi yenkosi yesilo. So Karumbidza comes from that. So I'll make a quick comment around the fact that the African state and the African intellectual If the African intellectual means the intimidating professor and myself because we are black, have not done one thing: to define ourselves and develop a philosophy of development, a theory of development. So he asks the question about research. The only way you do honest research is when you know who you are and what you are defining, and you even go to the language of that definition. So that process of self-knowing, self-defining, and then developing a theory and philosophy of that which you want to know. So, sikhohle these big words of epistemology, ontology, and all these things that they feed us with, and say, what is it that we want to know and to what end? And if you want to do and study history, you need to study yourself by starting asking the questions that my sister Utandeka, the king, said. She went out to say, who am I? Ngizalwa ngobani, wakuphi, kwenze njani. So that process requires that, and I think, I'm happy that obaba pamanazareth abafundisi abakhulu bakhona. It is a shame that today we do not have even a single such chair, research chair on Shembe. We do not have a single institute that is led by the Shembe people. We saw the red gowns in ICC, but here is a Shembe young person saying they're going to the internet to learn about Shembe. Internet kabani. Why would the people loading things on the internet be interested in developing and projecting a narrative of Shembe that is correct? Because bona bane philosophy and theory and agenda that informs their research process. That is not about building us. So someone said here, and I agree, enanda kuqhamuka uLuthuli, uShembe, uSeme, uDube. But today, Inanda is the epicenter of all crimes in South Africa. Each time a minister of police goes to give these crime states, we know that Inanda, kudlwengula abafazi, kubulawa abantu, every type of crime we see and hear comes from there. What are they saying, Belele? Because we have not started to define ourselves, which is the basis of research. Because research, your research questions, your methodologies and your theories are informed by that which you want to achieve that comes from the basis of self-knowing that is done in a language that is clear and that is yours. Sisakhuluma isingisi kanje asikwazi ukwenza i-research ngesingisi. Njengoba safika la sikhuluma ngama-bombastic, ungathi sikule kunalo khuluma i-bombastic kule nto yenu yozalo yambona. Asikwazi kwenza i-research ngathi ngoba asibona abelungu, asiphila isilungu, asidli isilungu. That's why even the food we eat, even everything, someone spoke of Greek salad, even the way we think of ourselves and who we want to be. Uzomuntu ethi uma ngikhula ngifuna ukwakha indlu enkulu efana neyomlungu. Because our orientation is still to whiteness. As I sit down, the challenge or the wish of every black person until they are decolonized is to become white. We have this internal, innate desire towards whiteness. That's why ubona abantu bakithi mhla eba ne-3 rand phezulu kweyokuthenga isinkwa uyoshada umfazi womlungu. Uma esethi khule esethi usuka kubantu uya laphaya, angizukunaba kuleyo nto angihlale phansi ungakakhuphuki umoya.
Ngisukuma nje nakhona igama engilizwile ukuthi singabantu abamnyama. Nombuzo nje enginawo. Ubani wathi simnyama? Waqala nini ukuthi sithi masiyibiza sithi singabantu abamnyama? ngoba masahluleka ukuthi siyibize ukuthi singobani sakude phambili. Okwesibili kuye kuthiwe uma ufuna ukulungisa into kufanele ufune umsuka wayo. Kukhona into engiye ngithi iyinselelo la kakhulukazi enkolweni ukuthi khona i-conference yaseBerlin eyayiklabha umhlaba njengoba sokhuluma sithi uphume eTanzania azalwe abase Mozambique yonke lento ayikhulumayo isukele ekutheni khona abaklabha umhlaba. Ebese kuba khona into yesibili la ngithi enkolweni kakhulukazi asiyiphenduli kuthi ngekhathi kuthunywa kuthiwa khona into ekuthiwa imission. Imission yayithini? Yenzeni? Akukho yini umngqubuzana phakathi kwemission ne-Africanism? Ngoba mhlambe kukhona igama elithi ngekhathi kuthunywa oyokwenza okuthile eAfrika wenemission ekufanele ayenze mhlambe leyo nto ingqubuzana ngqo nokuba umuntu. Uma ke kungenzeka ukuthi yangqubuzana nesintu nobuntu ikuphi esizokwenza in the context of ukuthi sesiyakholwa ukuthi mission noma esenza khona ke enkolweni ingangqubuzani nokuba umuntu. Ngiyabonga.
Two quick answers. On number one, thank you. We have PhD students in the house, Siyabonga. Now when you study history, the question when I introduced myself, I said, my mother is from Malawi, my father is from Mozambique. Bafike kona through process yamfekane. Bafike kaZulu through process yebantu migration from the north. So when you say Usiteya Gahadebe was Zulu, at what point in that history are you locating it at 1806? Or are you going back to 1740? Are you going back to 1600? So if you are a student of onomastics, names and history in Southern Africa, just go down to Free State. There's a place called Puta di Chaba, which means where all nations come together. Ubona izizwe zonke laphaya. Uma sithi umsheshe nabeSuthu bakhuphukela entabeni eMaseru, where were they coming from? So umsheshe is as good Zulu as he is Suthu. So at what point do you start? Uma sithi lapha eXhopho kunomzumkhulu, umzumkhulu kaXhosa, waba umzumkhulu nini kutheni kwenze njani? So when you want to start locating people in history according to tribe, again, as I did and you are doing, my brother, we are falling into that same trap of locating people and giving them an identity according to a specific prism. And I think that's difficult. Lastly, the issue of Africa identity, Singobani, it's really important, yes, but even the word Africa, this is why I said we need Amanazareta to hlanganisa imali. Let's fund our own research. Ukuze abantu abanolwazi, most of the sources of history bayahamba, omkhulu ogogo, bayadlula emhlabeni, bashiye singenalutho, singenalulwazi. So let's organize the funding so that we can start and we open up. You actually don't go into studying uthi usiteya ubesukapi because ufuna abe umZulu. You actually don't go into doing research with a predetermined conclusion. Be prepared to be uncomfortable with what you discover. Thank you.